my own. That's why I'm just trusting in you. As I can do what I do. I don't know what else to do.
Just fight a little longer, my friend. It's all worth it. If you got no one else to turn to, just hold on and find it. Just fight a little longer, my friend. It's all worth it in the end. When you got no one else to turn to, just hold on and find you. I'll find you. I'll find you. Just hold on and I'll find you. I'll find you. I'll find you. Just hold on and I'll find you.
Yeah. They say fear hunts and pain hates. I say pain strengthens and fear drives faith. Now I don't know all of the outcomes, don't know what happens tomorrow. But when that ocean of doubt comes, don't let me drown in my sorrow. Feel like this hole's too deep to climb. I feel like this hole's too deep to climb. And I've been looking for a way out, but I'll settle for a peace of mind. Picking up the pieces of my life, hoping that I put together something right. Tell me all I got is all I need. Tell me you gon' help me stand a fight. Yo, what's up, Edge? How we doing? Woo! Welcome to lunch. Welcome to lunch. What's up, everybody?
Hey, there's a lot of them.
There are a lot of people here. You guys doing good? Yeah? Who's excited to be here tonight? Sweet, sweet, sweet. Well, y'all can take a seat and we'll get going tonight.
Cool. Well, my name is Caitlin McGuire, and I have the privilege of hanging out with you guys. I know a lot of you from the Troy campus, but Shelby, what's up? Welcome.
Yes, my name is Richie. I have been in Shelby for the past 3 years, but we are now all together in one house, one family.
One
Excited to be
giant
with you
family.
guys.
Welcome, and I'm Sam. So, hey guys, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm pumped to be here. It's gonna be a great night.
Sam,
What?
what are you trying to do?
What am I trying to do?
You're trying to do
Freestyle
impressions.
now.
Oh shoot! Yo, we up here. Nothing rhymes with edge.
If you didn't
If I'm up
know,
here at edge, we getting over the hedge, and everybody wanna
There
do
you
it,
go.
but I'm already
There you
dead.
go.
If I'm living the life, so I'm just living it clear, and everybody walking through it, so we gon' persevere. If we gonna say it, yeah, that's good.
he's
Good
still
enough.
going. All right.
Good enough.
There's a couple other people that you guys need to meet. Everybody turn up front, say hi, Amy.
Hi, Amy.
Amy makes everything happen in this chapel, everything from the band to that sick video to everything else that's gonna go on in here. So make sure you get to know her. There's got another person, Catherine. Where's Catherine at? Where's she at?
Catherine, where'd you go? Back there, with her hand up. Yes.
Catherine is our awesome intern. She sings real good. I think she's got some fans down here.
Yeah.
And one other friend that you guys don't know, some of you do, her name's Carly. She's not here tonight, but she's gonna be around.
Yeah,
Yes.
Carly.
Yes, so that is the team. And hey, here's the amazing thing. We have decided, it was several months ago, right? I don't know even when, it seems like forever ago. Yeah. We came together and we were trying to figure out what are we gonna do this year at Edge. And so we sat down and me and Richie started talking and we said, wouldn't it be cool if we packed out the chapel every single week and we brought both communities together to have one family, one place, and just have an amazing time worshiping and connecting with God together. So that's what we're doing. That's why you're all here, and we're going to lead you as a team and try and do this.
Yes.
Sweet.
It's going to be awesome. We're really, really excited about the two communities coming together. I know it might feel big right now, but honestly, our heart and hope is that this would feel like a family. You're going to have a chance after the end of the night to jump into a small group that's going to just be a great place for you to connect and get going here, because we've got a great year planned. I don't know if you want to share anything, but...
Oh man, I'm just ready to be here, guys. Like, it's gonna be, how many of y'all are excited for what God's going to do this year? It's going to be, I'm just telling you, it's going to be awesome. I think about the last 12 months. Y'all think about the last 12 months of your life and think about what could be in the next 12 months. In Ephesians 3:20, it says that God promises us more than we could ask or imagine. So, like, think about beyond what you can even imagine. And that's, you know what I mean? That's pretty exciting. It's pretty exciting, guys.
And let me say this, maybe you're here because you got on a bus at Shelby or your parents dropped you off, you know, at those doors and you're like, what did I just walk into? And you're sitting there going, I don't know if I belong here. I don't know if I fit in here. Let me tell you this. If you'll engage
for the next little bit, if you'll engage the rest of this night, I can promise you that you will find friends, you will find family, you'll have a ton of fun, and that you're going to be challenged to grow in your walk with God, even if it is just taking one step and asking the question, maybe I believe in this guy, okay? So don't just tune out because you're like, oh, I don't know what I walked into. Engage for the next little bit, because I can promise you that if you do, the story that God's using to write your life is going to be advanced, and all you have to do is be willing to step into that.
That's good. That's good. Well, hey, tonight kicks off a 3-week thing that we're calling Edgepalooza. All right. So for the next 3 weeks, we're not just going to have 1 week of launch. We're going to go crazy for the next 3 weeks. And so here's actually what's happening next week. Is you're gonna get something on your way out, but we're gonna switch things up a little bit, and we're gonna do the most epic road rally scavenger hunt you've ever
Take an
experienced
edge on
in
the
your
road.
life. Anybody from Shelby who did that last year with us? You guys have a good time? Yeah. Hey, we thought we'd do it all together. So here's how this is gonna work: is we're all gonna meet here next week, same time, same place. But then we're gonna jump on a bus or in your leaders' cars, and we're all gonna go to downtown Rochester. And we're going to be running around like madmen, crazy people, doing an epic scavenger hunt, all right? And so if you've got friends who aren't here tonight, or people you want to be connected here, or even if this is your first time, we want you back, because next week is going to be an absolute blast for that. You'll hear more about that in your small groups, but here's the deal, all right? Each small group has a mission tonight, okay? So when we get here next week, and in small group this week, you guys are going to pick a team uniform in your small group. And the best dressed team starts out with an extra 1,000 points. And the winning small group is going to get something epic on the 3rd week of Edge. So get ready. It's going to be great. We're really, really excited about it. It's going to be a blast.
Best dress ever.
Yes.
Cool.
Well, hey, here's the deal. We're going to get going tonight, but we know we got 2 different communities in here. So, if you're from Shelby, I want you to meet 2 new Troy people, and if you're from Troy, I want you to meet 2 new Shelby people. You got a minute? Ready? Go! All right. To be with you guys here tonight. It's going to be epic. I'm really excited. It's new for everybody, right? This is a new adventure, jumping into things. It's a new role for all your directors and leaders, jumping into a new beginning. And here's what I know as we jump in as a community, and I know we've been Troy and Shelby in 2 separate places, but tonight is where we become one family, and we jump into this new beginning of what God has for us. And as we're merging and dreaming of all God's going to do in this adventure, we've been so excited about it. And it's been really, really fun to jump into something new for what God's going to do. Of our small group leaders got engaged. Where's Andrea and Steven? Andrea and Steven, where are you? Oh, yes, back there. They're loud, everybody. They got engaged, which was really fun. And they're jumping into a new adventure just like us. But I want to kick off tonight talking about something. How many of you guys have ever jumped into something really unprepared? Anybody take the ACT this year? SAT? Yeah. Let me tell you a story about something that I jumped into really unprepared. It's a story of me attempting to run a half marathon. Sorry. Wow, that was a little mean. Just kidding. But hey, a few years ago, let me tell you this. A few years ago, my wife Jenna's sitting over here. She comes up to me and she goes, "Hey babe, I really want to run a half marathon." And I was like, "That's great. You should do that." And she's like, "No, like I want us to do it." And I was like, "The only place I'm running is to the bathroom. Like I'm not going anywhere." right? And she's like, no, like I really want to. And fellas, you know, when she starts going there, it's like, do I say no or do I just suffer and say yes when I really don't want to? And so I was like, all right, we'll do it, right? We'll jump into this marathon training and we'll go there. And so we show up. How many of you guys know about Hope Water Project here at Kensington, running to build wells in Kenya? Yes. And so we show up at Stony Creek to run, and we get there. And as we show up, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what I'm getting myself into. Like I haven't ran like ever. And we get there, and the guy's like giving this nice speech. He's like, all right, we got a 5-mile run today. And I look at Jen and I go, five miles? I haven't ran a total of 5 miles like ever. All right, like I don't know how this is gonna go. And she's like, no, babe, it's good. We got new shoes. Like you're good. And so we start running, and we're taking on this thing, and like, all right, for the first mile, I was like, all right, this is all right. Like I can do this, right? And then we get like 1.5 miles in, and my hip starts hurting a little bit, and then something started happening that was super embarrassing. All right, so I've been the student ministries director at Shelby, and all of these moms of these students start like roaring by me. And they're like, hey Richie, I'm so glad you're here. And like, yeah, okay, whatever. And they're running by me, and they're asking how I'm doing, and I'm like, I'm great, I don't know what's going on, okay? And it was horrible, it was an absolute horrible experience, and I finished the 5 miles, I'm like limping, it was absolutely horrible, and it was crazy. I showed up that day, and I'm 250 pounds, and I'm like, who am I kidding? I'm not gonna run 5 miles. But through the preparation, stepping into it, we ended up finishing the half marathon, and I'm happy to say I've never ran since. And I feel great about it. And I'll never do it again. It was horrible. Who runs cross country or track in here? You guys, God loves you a little bit more than the rest of us apparently, because running, who hates running? Everybody? Look at that, all right? Check yourself. But really this idea of this new adventure, jumping in prepared, and as we jump into this idea of what God's gonna do here, well, it's exciting and it brings hope. Something I learned in that marathon training is that if I don't take steps for change, I won't see the change that I'm hoping for. That if I don't actually jump in and try to do this, I'm not gonna see the things that I want, right? Like you can't just show up and expect to run 5 miles when you're 250 pounds and haven't ran since high school, right? And thinking about this year for you guys, think about your life, right? Not just here at Edge, but your whole life. And kind of the hopes and dreams that come with the new year. And this is what I want to ask you tonight as we jump into this year, is what would it look like for you not to just show up and let this year pass by, but what would it look like for you to actually step into maybe what God's calling you into? What would it look like for you to step into everything that He's calling you into, and not just passively expect this year to be another year at Edge or another year of high school, but really believed that wherever you're at tonight, whether it's your first night here or you've been coming here your whole life, that Jesus is calling you into a greater adventure than what you're currently living in? What if you really believed that He wants to move you from where you are now into something greater? And that you didn't just go through this year passively and just expect change and expect the good things that happen with all the hopes of a new year, of school, of class, of sports teams, of friends, but you actually made changes in your life, stepped into things that He was calling you into. Because to move where we are now to where He's calling us, it requires us to take steps to find Him, to take steps to draw near to Him. And here's what I want to say tonight, is that my hope as we come together as two communities, and that we're one after a night, is that you would step into everything that God's calling you to. That this would be a year where you step into it, that in our journey of seeking after God this year, that it wouldn't just end there seeking Him, but this is actually my hope, is that you would find Him this year. That you would find Him like never before. Whether you have a relationship with Him or you know nothing about Him, that this would be a place where you would find God, that this would be a year of finding God, a year of encounter. And tonight we're going to jump into a scripture right now, a story in Luke about a few people who went from this place of seeking after God to actually finding Him. And I think as we jump into that, we're going to see ourselves in this story, and that we would also be people who don't just seek after Him, but find Him and discover everything that He has for us. So that's my hope as we jump into this year, that we would find Him, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And so I'm going to pray as we open the scriptures, and I want you guys to pray along with me. But I really, as we jump into this, I want you to pray with me. Not as just a time where it's like, okay, this guy's got to pray soon and then it can be done. I want you to pray expectant that you would find him from wherever you're at. So let me pray and we'll jump in. So Jesus, we just thank you for who you are, and that we're here tonight, and that tonight represents a new beginning, a new plan, a new thing that you're doing. And God, could we get a glimpse tonight of what you're calling us into, what you're asking us to jump into? And would we answer the call of what you have on our life? So Jesus, we invite you in this place. God, I ask that you would move and that you would do what only you can do. We love you, Jesus. It's your name we pray. Amen. So we're going to jump into a story in Luke 5. If you have a Bible, you can open it up, or probably on your phone, let's be honest, or nothing, and it's on the screen. So we're going to jump into this. And as we jump into this, we're going to take a look at the different characters throughout the story. There's multiple different characters, and we're going to look at them tonight. And as we look at them, I want you to ask yourself this question. What is Jesus calling me into this year? What is he drawing me into, inviting me into? So we'll jump in Luke 5, verse 17. It says, on one of those days as he was teaching, Pharisees and teachers of the law were sitting there. They're talking about Jesus. Jesus is teaching, and there's people watching. And they had come from every village of Galilee and Judea and from Jerusalem, and the power of the Lord was with him to heal. So there's this huge crowd, and Jesus is teaching, and it says, and behold, some men were bringing on a bed a man who was paralyzed. And they were seeking to bring him in and lay him before Jesus. But finding no way to bring him in because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and let him down with his bed through the tiles into the midst before Jesus. See, these guys are trying to bring their friend to Jesus. There's this huge crowd, but they're determined to get this guy who's paralyzed on this bed before Jesus. And so they do this. They rip a hole in the roof, and they somehow get their friend before Jesus. And it says in verse 20, and when he saw their faith, he said, man, your sins are forgiven. And the scribes and Pharisees began to question, saying, who is this that speaks blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone? Right? So these dudes are watching. At the beginning of the story, we find out that they're there, and they're watching, and they're angry about what Jesus has just said. They don't like what he just said. And Jesus says this. It says, when he perceived their thoughts, he answered them. Why do you question in your hearts? What is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or to say, rise and walk? But that you might know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins. And he said to the man who was paralyzed, and this is in front of everybody, this whole crowd, all these people are skeptical of Jesus. He says to the man who's paralyzed, he says, I say to you, rise, pick up your bed and go home. And immediately he rose before them, picked up what he had been laying on, and went home, glorifying God. This is the last verse, verse 26. And if there's honestly a verse that I hope happens this year in this place, it's this. It says, in amazement seized them all. And they glorified God and were filled with awe, saying, we have seen extraordinary things today. My hope is at the end of this year, we would have seen extraordinary things this year in your lives and in this story. And so we got all these different characters kind of going on in this story. Right? And the first ones I want to talk about are these Pharisees and teachers. These guys are kind of getting on Jesus about who he's at and what he's like. It's really the first people mentioned in this story. And a little background, if you don't know who these guys are. It's really, if anyone was supposed to know the answers to faith, the answers to life, the tough questions about who God is, what he's doing, it was these guys, the Pharisees and teachers. They were keepers of the law. In fact, guess how many laws they had? These dudes had 613 laws that they had to memorize, know, and keep and enforce with their communities. 613. I can't even not text and drive, right? Oh, you guys are all like, me too, Mom. And really what we have is at this point in the narrative is Jesus has already ruffled some feathers in these people. He's already turned some things upside down. And so these dudes show up, and they're there not to learn. They're there to criticize. They're there to maybe observe, but they're there in no way to embrace what Jesus is saying. They had a certain view of how the world worked, how God worked, and what he was doing. And so in walks Jesus into the scene, and he challenges everything they know about who God is and what he wants to do in people's lives. I mean, he even says, they have this interaction, and it starts in verse 20. Remember, he talks about, and Jesus goes, hey, your sins are forgiven to the paralytic. And they're like, what? Who can forgive sins but God alone? And Jesus is like, all right, you're right. I'll do you one better. Get up and walk. And he tells this dude to get up, to rise up and walk. And immediately this guy rises up and he walks in front of this whole crowd. And you see, while these dudes criticize and question, something shifts in the story. I don't know if you caught it. Jesus calls out their thoughts, and he even says that he perceived what they were thinking. But something happens before that. Did you see it? Right before that, they ask, who can forgive sins but God alone? You see, what they're doing here is they're being honest about what they think about Jesus. They're honest. They're not hiding. They're honest with what they're thinking about, how they felt. They basically go, we don't believe you. I don't believe who you are, Jesus. I don't believe what you have to say about sin, what you're saying to this guy. I don't believe you. And here's what I know tonight, sitting in this room, look around you. Some of you are in here, and many of you, maybe even for the first time, you decided to show up tonight. That this was your first time, and in a similar way, you're checking out to see what this Jesus thing is all about. Maybe you've heard from a friend, or maybe you were invited from a friend, or you heard about Edge, or whatever it is. You're new and you're here, and maybe you're skeptical and you're not quite sure what this Jesus thing is all about. And here's my advice to you if you're sitting there tonight. Just be honest. Be real about what's going on in your mind and in your heart. Be honest with what's going on. It's okay to say, I don't believe this. I don't understand this. I don't get this. I'm questioning this. It's okay to question it. That's exactly what these dudes did. And let's be honest, it even says that he perceived their thoughts. Jesus already knows what you're thinking. He already knows what's going on in your heart and mind. Just be honest. See, maybe you've gone through something in life that's caused you to question God. It's caused you to question God. Is he real? Does he care about me? Is he looking at me? Is he watching in my life? Maybe you're even looking at the world right now. I mean, Hurricane Irma is about to hit Florida. It already is. There was a hurricane last week. There's Charlottesville a few weeks ago. There's terrorism. There's mass chaos and destruction going on in our world. And maybe you're sitting there going, why would God let this happen? But you're too afraid to speak it out. Or maybe someone close to you was taken and you don't understand. You don't get it. But you don't feel safe enough to challenge and ask the question of God, why did you do this? Or ask somebody else. Or maybe something just happened in your life and you don't understand it. Here's what I want to say to you. Tell them. Tell somebody. Talk about it. Be honest with what's going on. There's been seasons in my life where I've questioned who God is and what he's doing. And I work for God. That's like my job. Right? And there's been seasons where I've been in my house yelling, Jesus, what are you doing? I don't trust you right now. I don't believe what you're saying. I don't understand what's going on. Tell him what's going on in your life. Be honest, because honesty always leads to an encounter. And if there's a place that we want you to be honest in your life about faith and what's going on real in your life, it's here. You don't even have to believe in Jesus to do that. We want this to be a place that you belong before you believe how we believe. That you're allowed to be here and not align with our beliefs. We want this to be a place where you can invite your friends who don't know Jesus or are far from him or don't even care about God, and they could come and ask those questions. Because these questions, once they were honest in the story and once we're honest, are what caused them to go from seeking, looking, wondering, who is Jesus, to actually finding him. To finding what he was all about. And in the midst of this whole story, it's going on, there's this huge crowd. Right? There's this huge crowd going on. In front of these interactions, these things that are going on. And people are listening to Jesus and they're watching him heal people. And in the middle of this crowd of people, two dudes stand up and they bring their friend on a bed. And they sift through the crowd, they fight through the crowd to bring their friend to the feet of Jesus. I mean, picture that. There's this whole crowd, and everyone's looking and wondering, and these guys are shuffling their way through. They even cut a hole in the roof to drop their friend right before Jesus. It says in verse 18, and behold, some men were bringing on a bed a man who was paralyzed. And they were seeking to bring him in and lay him before Jesus, but finding no way to bring him in because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and let him down with his bed through the tiles in the midst before Jesus. You see, there's a huge difference between the crowd and the men bringing the dude on the bed. They were all in the crowd together, but the crowd, see, they got to witness some really sweet stuff. I mean, they did. They probably at this point already seen Jesus perform some sweet miracles. They were amazed at Jesus doing this. They've seen some cool things, but the dudes who decided to rise up above the crowd, bring their friend before Jesus, they didn't just see some cool stuff. They were transformed forever. Their lives were radically transformed forever. And this is what I know for some of you, and not everyone. But for some of you, you've been coming to Edge for a long time. You've been coming to Kensington, coming to church. You've been doing that thing for a long time, and you've seen God do some pretty sweet stuff in your life and in your friend's life. But some of you have been coming and you're in the crowd, and what I believe Jesus wants to say to you tonight is it's time to rise up out of the crowd and go. It's time to get up. You're going to be amazed by watching what Jesus does this year in and through this place and in your life, but you're going to be transformed once you get into the game. That once you take that step, and some of you have been coming here for so long, or maybe you even this summer, and you're wondering, why haven't I been growing? Why do I feel far from God? Why does it feel like He's distant? Why do I feel like I don't know Him? Why? All of these things. And here's what I know, is it's time for you to get in the game. It's time for you to step into it. This is your year. The seniors graduated. All right? They're gone. It's time for somebody to step up and get in the game and take ownership and leadership over this place and rise up. This is your year, and He's inviting you to get out of the crowd. And it's here where these dudes, they went from just other seekers in the crowd to finders of God in His presence. That everything will shift in your life if you decide to rise up out of the crowd and truly follow Him. I've seen it time and time again, story after story of people in here. And I know it. I know I shared this at Fire Starters, but this is what came to my mind again. I just felt like I wanted to share it again, was Hannah. I look at Hannah Rubel, she's one of our Shelby kids, and Hannah last year, how many of you guys remember our Christian Atheist series around January, February? Hannah had been coming a little bit, and she started seeing some of her friends take huge steps towards Jesus. But Hannah was also honest with herself, and there was something in her life, and she knew that if she wanted to get closer to Jesus, she had to take steps. And one of those steps for her was she knew she needed to stop drinking. And she'd come to Edge on Sunday, but Friday and Saturday night, at some point she was drinking with her friends. And I'll never forget it because I heard the story, is that Hannah left the Christian Atheist series one night, and she went home and she was like, Jesus, if I'm going to do this, I have to go all in. And she took all the alcohol from under her bed and poured it down the drain and hasn't drank since. And there's But it's that decision that shifted everything. And some of you have been sitting in the crowd, and just a number. It's time to rise out of the crowd and be the ones that are making a pursuit after Jesus. You know what else I think we learn from these friends? From these guys who bring this dude on this mat. I'm actually going to read 2 other verses to kind of paint a picture. But Jeremiah 29, verse 12 says, Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. And you will seek me and find me. And when you seek me with all of your heart, I will be found by you. James 4:8 says, Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. See, here's what I think we learn from these guys too. Is that something happens when I actively choose to focus and find Jesus. That something in my life will start to shift when I actually decide that I'm going to pursue Him, I'm going to go after Him and find Him. That when I position my life to focus on Him, I will find Him. I mean, it's a promise. It says, draw near to God and He will draw near to you. I see this over and over and over again. How many of you guys have been on like Wild Retreat or NTS or PCB or a trip? And it's like, it seems like God is like alive on these trips, or maybe even come to Edge on Sunday night. But then you go home and you do the daily routine Monday to Friday, and it feels like by the time the next week rolls around, you're distant from Him again. Why does that happen? Because there's something happens when you decide to shift your focus. So even tonight you're sitting here, and you might even feeling like you're getting revived and closer to Jesus even in this moment, and it's like, why? Because He's finally got your attention, and He's going to show you who He is. He's going to show up and reveal to you who He actually is. And this is what happens when we shift our focus to Him. You see, for these dude, everything changed when they decided to separate themselves from the crowd. Because it's easier. It's easier to blend in. It's easier to just go through the motions and go through life and do the status quo. It takes risk and sacrifice to stick out, to jump out. I mean, picture these dudes just going through the crowd. But for them, they decided that nothing else mattered than getting in front of Jesus. That nothing else mattered. It didn't matter how people would look at them when they rose above the crowd. It didn't matter about anything. All they cared about was getting before Jesus and knowing Him. And getting their friend there too. And I want to be like this. This is the life I want to live, but if I'm honest, it's hard. It's easier to sleep in. It's easier to scroll through Twitter at night. It's easier to just go in the motions and do what everybody else is doing. You see, I think the only difference between the crowd and the guys that rose up was that they just stood up and they made a decision. I'm going to go after you. There's not like super Christians or people that like have it all together. There's just people that say, I love Jesus and I'm going to follow Him. And I'm going to make that decision to do it. And I think for some of you, it's time to do that. That He's calling you into this year of radical obedience and full surrender. And here's the deal. Some people might judge you. Some people might question your decisions. Some people might look at you differently. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because tonight is the start where I say nothing matters to me than Jesus. Nothing is better than Him. Nothing's going to get my attention other than who Jesus is. And because of that, you're going to go from a seeker to a finder of who God is. But don't miss this. Because what was the whole reason that they were fighting through the crowd to get before Jesus? What was the reason they did that? It wasn't for them. What were they doing? They were bringing their friend who had no other way to get to Jesus, and they were going to be the ones to get him there. You see, at some point, as I make this decision to follow Jesus, it doesn't just become all about me anymore. It becomes about everybody else around me. And if there's a picture I want to give you for this year, if you call this place home, and you come here week after week, and you're excited about what God's doing here, if there's a picture I want to give you, it's this, is that I want to be a community. We want to be a community that I'm going to do everything I can to get my friends to the presence and feet of Jesus. That I'm going to rise above the crowd when no one else is doing it, when everybody else thinks it's weird, that I'm going to be the ones that fight to get in the presence of Jesus and bring my friends there with me. Dave Wilson says this. He says, we're going to do everything short of sin to reach people far from God. I want us to be people that fight to get their friends at the feet of Jesus. I'm going to push everything out of the way so that I can lead my friends and get them before Him. Not because I think I have some magic that makes life all better and blah, 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 but Jesus has transformed my life, then I have to tell someone else about it. I have to be more concerned with my friends discovering who Jesus is than what that crowd just thinks of me on my way to Him. And to think of this picture that these dudes risked everything. And everyone was looking at them, but nothing was going to stop them. They cut a hole in the roof just so their friend could get before Jesus and get healing and find Him. Because they knew who He was. They knew the power of Jesus and who He was, that He was different than maybe what other religious people have said. He was different than what other people had known about Him. And in their seeking of Jesus, the paralytic man also found Jesus. And I want to be a place that fights for our friends to know Him. And not be like weird, all right? We don't need any more weird Christians, all right? But people who just live out their faith and love people well. And show people who Jesus is. So that men, just like this man, could be healed. Because ultimately, that's who this story is about. That's who this story is about, is this man. This man, where Jesus looks at him and He says, rise, pick up your bed and go home. And immediately he rose up before them and picked up what he had been lying on and went home to glorify God. You see, once I come before Jesus, no matter what state I'm in, no matter where I'm at in life, He's always inviting me into more. He's always calling me into more. And here's what I know tonight, is that some of you in here are sitting here, and this is your last straw with Jesus. You told mom and dad you'd show up tonight, but this was it. Reminds me of Audrey Warner. Came on a Kenya trip with us, and she went on the trip, and she said, Jesus, if you don't show yourself on this trip, I'm never going to follow you again. He showed up in her life, radically changed it, and she's been a huge leader for us, but some of you are walking in here living paralyzed, dead lives. You're walking in here and you're carrying in depression. You're carrying anxiety. You thought that this new school year would bring hope, but you just found yourself walking through the halls this past week feeling insecure again. And that no one wanted me, no one liked me. You're feeling fearful, shameful, dirty, not good enough. And you're like, Jesus, I'm going to come tonight, but this is it. You know what I think he's saying? I think he's looking at you and he's going, get up and walk. Get up and walk. Jesus brought you here tonight, not for just another night, but for a night to wake you up and look at you and say, you don't have to live like this anymore. You don't have to continue in the pain and the things you're going through, that I'm actually inviting you into more. I'm not who you think I am. I'm better than you thought. And I'm calling you into more. And when you come to me, you don't just get better life or whatever it is, but you get to trade your depression for joy. You get to trade your anxiety for peace. You get to trade your insecurity for confidence, your fear for hope. And Jesus is looking at you and he's going, you don't have to live like this anymore. The life you've been living, the hurt you're going through, the skepticism, whatever it is, I'm calling you into new life. But you've got to get up and walk. You've got to respond to this and get up and walk and realize that I am calling you into greater things than what you're living in right now. And this is the story that changed my life. This was the story that ultimately changed my life. And I'm going to call the band up. And we're going to jump into worship. But I want to share to you how I experienced this myself, of going from just seeking to finding who Jesus was. I mean, just like maybe some of you guys walking in here tonight. I remember, I'll fast forward the story a little bit, but it was my freshman year of college. And I was up at Central Michigan, and I've been dating a girl for the past 3 or 4 years. And we've been dating all throughout high school. We thought we were going to marry each other, all this stuff. And I thought it was really great. And what ended up happening is I went off to school, and she stayed back home. And through that year, I started getting sucked into the college scene, of partying and drinking and going out with my friends. And somewhere along that line, I made a mistake, and I ended up cheating on this girl. And so I ended up telling her that I did this. And unbeknownst to me, she told me I've been doing the same thing. And what that started was this cycle of brokenness in my life. That the only thing I cared about was what this chick thought of me. The only thing I cared about is what she thought of me, and I put all of my identity and security into how she made me feel. And what I started to realize is that she wasn't doing it. In fact, she was just making me feel like crap. She was making me feel absolutely horrible about myself, and it turned in this downward spiral that I didn't know how to deal with it. And the only way I knew how to deal with it was to drink a little bit more, to hook up with this girl, to get back at her, to do this, to do that. And it was this mess. It was this absolute mess. And around that time, I get invited to this Bible study, and I was literally like, whatever, I'll go. I've got nothing else. I'll show up, I'll go, nothing's going to happen. And I started to realize there, as I got a glimpse, not everything shifted that night, but I got a glimpse that maybe there was more than what I was living in. And so I started to go every week and seek after this a little bit. And in that seeking, I ended up getting invited on this trip, the spring break trip, and I went down to Florida on this mission trip. And to be honest with you, I showed up to the mission trip to get in the van, and I was hungover from the night before. Because I didn't know what was going on. And so I show up on this trip, and long story short, there was a night where I realized that I didn't have to live like this anymore. That the brokenness I was experiencing, that the pain I was dealing with, that the hurt I was dealing with, that there was actually a way out, and his name was Jesus. But it required me to step into it. And I remember that night. I remember sitting there that night and saying, I have no idea what it looks like to follow you. But I don't think I have another option. I don't think I have another option other than to step into what you're calling me into. And here's what I want to say to you guys tonight. He's calling you into something. That where you're at right now isn't where you're going to be a year from now. And you get to make the decision of what that is. Is this just going to be another year? Is this going to be another thing? Are you going to go through the same messed up cycles and hurts and pains? Or could maybe Jesus be calling you into a greater life, a newer life? I believe He is. Whether it's your first time or your 100th time here, I believe that He has more for you. And I found that He was actually the one seeking me, and I found Him. And I discovered that as I drew near to Him, He drew near to me. And so wherever you're at tonight, whether you're the Pharisees and teachers and the skeptics, or you're in the crowd, He's inviting you into more. He's inviting you into a greater adventure. So what is it? What is He calling you into this year? What is this year going to be about for you? And so we're going to jump into worship. And as we do that, I want to lead you guys in a prayer of just asking the Lord that yourself. And maybe you've never prayed like that before. Maybe you've never thought about even asking God a question. But I'm just going to ask, I'm going to lead us through a prayer time. And we're just going to ask Him, Jesus, what are you calling me into? And I want you guys to take this time as we jump into worship, that even though we're in a room full of probably 150, 200 people, that it would just be for you and Jesus. And that you would draw near to Him and ask Him, Jesus, what are you calling me into? What do you have for me? And you would discover it, and you would hold on to that and walk out of here towards that. So let's pray and jump into worship. So Jesus, we love you, and we recognize your presence with us. That you're here. So as you're sitting there, do whatever you need to do to just breathe and be still. Don't be distracted by the person next to you. So Jesus, we confess that you're Lord over all things, that you came and walked among us a perfect life, and by your blood we have forgiveness of sins and resurrection life. And so Jesus, we're coming to you right now, looking to seek after you, drawing near to you. And so just ask Him this question. Jesus, what are you calling me to step into this year? What changes do you want me to make in my life to find you, to draw near to you? Just spend time with Him and ask that question. And whatever comes to your mind, write it in your phone or on a note. But respond to what He's calling you into.
my heart. Be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. For you are good, you're good. Oh,
So God, tonight we believe that the words that we are singing are the truth that you have already given us. And God, as we head into our school years, as we head into this year at Edge, that we would never forget that there's a God who has already gone before us, who is fighting on behalf of us, who loves us so deeply that there's nothing that can stand in the way of our connection to Him. So God, I pray that you would continue to speak as we go into small groups and spend time connected to each other in community. And God, for those of us in this room that aren't sure if we even believe in any of this, God, I just pray that this would be just the beginning. That tonight would be a night where we begin to ask the question, God, if you're real, show me. So we love you. In your name we pray. Amen. You guys can grab a seat real quick. One thing we love about coming together is that we get to join together in moments like this. We get to worship together, but then you guys have the chance to go into small groups where you can be in a smaller community and really discuss what it is you've talked about. Share that family feel that we've talked about desiring so deeply. And so we're going to actually move into a time of small groups. This is how we'll end every night at Edge, is a chance for you to be in a group with people just like you, most of the time in the same school, same gender, all that stuff. But my challenge to you would be don't write off your time in small group. Don't let that time just pass you by and you just move on until the end, because there are leaders and there are people here that care so deeply about you. And there are leaders that give up every Sunday night. They consistently show up because they care about you. They're not getting paid. They're not getting any benefit to come except to love on you. And so use this time to grow as a family, to connect together, and then to continue to make a difference around you.
Yeah, just exactly what Caitlin said. We really believe small groups are the place where lives get transformed, where you get to walk through life with people. Some of my best friends in my entire life have been people that I've been in small group with. And so this time, as you're jumping in, maybe you're new here tonight and you're like, oh my gosh, my mom didn't tell me this. Dude, just jump in. Get in, because there's some people here that are awesome, and this is a great place for you to explore your faith, whether you, like I said, whether you've been here before or not. We want small groups to be a place where you can talk about the real things, because let's be honest, it's kind of hard to be real everywhere else outside of here. So let this be a place where you can connect and get real with each other.